The Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order, please. The clerk will, or the assistant will please take the roll. Although it is, I think that it is John's turn to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Regular agenda. Can I have a motion on the approval of the September 8th, 2025 Planning and Zoning meeting minutes?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Next item of business is a presentation by Alex Hayes. But before we get to that, would Stacy please tell us why we're hearing from this wonderful young man who's driven all the way up from the valley to be here?
Well, Chairman Burns, members of the commission, I couldn't agree with you more. Alex is a wonderful person. I've invited Alex to come up this evening to present a current application that we have from him. He's representing Scott Whalen, the owner of a property that's on Carefree Drive. And we had stated before that when there's key development going on in town, we wanted to make sure that it became public and public knowledge. They held their required neighborhood meeting at the Hampton Inn a couple of weeks ago, I would say. And they did all the proper notifications, and nobody attended the meeting. And so we just felt that rather than it just coming before you at a public hearing, rather be coming before the public at a public hearing, that you had an opportunity to understand the application and what it entails and what's involved. Again, this is for informational purposes. I think that you're welcome to ask questions. I think and I have Attorney Cook here as well. As this isn't sort of a public vetting, so to speak, but I wanted to be sure that you all were aware of what would be coming forward the next couple of months.
Will this project or is it being requested to have a variance or a change in the zoning ordinance or some other official action that we have to be taking at some point in time?
Yes, it will. So this will, the applicant is looking to a request for a text amendment to our zoning ordinance. And that text amendment involves a new language related to a conditional use permit process. And I'm sure he'll be happy to explain that throughout his presentation. But ultimately, the application was for a text amendment and conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Happy.
With that, Mr. Alex Hayes.
Okay, it's on.
Welcome to Carefree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Alex Hayes, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle for your records. Hopefully I can live up to that very kind introduction. I'm grateful to be here. We're discussing Ascena Carefree. This is a proposed mixed use. Is that presentation just next, or? This is a proposed mixed use development, commercial and residential, within the Village Center redevelopment area. And specifically our request is for a conditional use permit for a mixed use residential, but then on top of that it's a text amendment to revise the town zoning ordinance as it relates to conditional use permits for mixed use development within the commercial district. There we go. Okay, perfect. So this property, the subject site, is located within the Village Center redevelopment area. And I'm going to use Village Center and Town Center kind of interchangeably today, as I think the town does. But it's located on Carefree Drive, just outside of Easy Street, kind of behind the Bank of America building, which fronts Tom Darlington, just across Carefree Drive from the Bashes Shopping Center. And the property is currently vacant. It has, you're probably familiar with the property just right around the corner here. Has a wash that runs through it, as well as some native desert foliage and some boulders. Has a zoning district of commercial designation, as does the bulk of the town center. General plan designation of town center as well. I think we lost our screen here again. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, I can see it.
I do have a physical copy here, so I can flip through on my end. Bear with me a second. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, for those of you who were on the commission or were following the land use trends here in the town over the recent years, and in 2021, the town established the Village Center redevelopment area, which is primarily the area designated town center, really the town core for the town, the area designated town core on the general plan map. But it did include a small area of commercial property kind of north of Tom Darlington, just west of Carefree Drive, or excuse me, Cave Creek Road. And the idea with that Village Center redevelopment area was to attract new investment and redevelopment into the Village Center to create more economic vibrancy, and to support the existing development and also bring in new commercial development to this area. And so to kind of effectuate that plan, the town commissioned the Village Center redevelopment plan, which was essentially a study effort to come up with some regulatory guidelines, planning guidelines, marketing guidelines to encourage redevelopment, again, bring that additional economic vibrancy to the Village Center. That Village Center redevelopment plan was approved by Town Council in January of 2023 after a unanimous recommendation of approval from this commission. And it was the result of a very robust community outreach and stakeholding process. There were, this commission held 5 workshop sessions. There were 6 neighborhood meetings and additional 2 general open houses for the broader public to help inform that planning process and ultimately create a document that would guide the town and different town bodies, including the Planning and Zoning Commission, as they, to provide planning guidelines and regulatory policies to, again, encourage that redevelopment. I think one of the, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it, so which slide do you have in front of you on the screen?
Sorry, Village Center redevelopment plan, strategic.
Okay, great. So one of the key takeaways of that plan was that in order for the Village Center to be successful, you just need more bodies. And the best way to do that, according to this plan, was to add additional housing and residential land uses to the mix of uses within the Village Center. And then one of the regulatory recommendations was to update the permitted uses and development standards, such as the setbacks, lot coverage, and parking requirements for development in the Village Center to create those compatible mix of uses, and also to allow for more of that development by right, and also through a limited or minimal entitlement process, which is kind of why we're here today with the proposal that we have. One of the things that jumped out to me in reviewing the redevelopment plan was the amount of economic leakage that's occurring in the town currently. You have over 98% of the town residents leaving the town jurisdiction for work, and conversely, you have 98% of the jobs within the town staffed by people who don't live here. And I think one of the primary reasons for that is you don't have attainable housing solutions and housing options for the town's workforce to live. One of the things that the redevelopment plan highlighted was that what's missing in the Carefree Village Center is housing, and housing at a density to provide that critical mass to support the existing and potential businesses within the town center. And another thing that I thought was interesting in there is that as part of the redevelopment plan process, they did a consumer survey of residents of the town, and they found that there were quite a few people who actually want to live in the Village Center, and one of the things that they were primarily interested in was condo ownership. And I think you'll see that that's exactly what we're proposing here today. The redevelopment plan included a master plan, and one of the things it noted was that the property, the site that the subject of this request was actually identified as one of the primary properties with the most potential for residential development. And so all that really informed the development that we propose here today. This is what you see is the result of extensive conversations with planning staff, economic development staff, and the applicants' coordination with their own architecture team to come up with a plan that really achieves the goals of the redevelopment plan and kind of the overall town goals for, maintaining economic activity in the town center, the village center, but also providing that residential component that will bring new bodies and new energy to the village center. So mixed use in the commercial district is actually already permitted in existing buildings, and it's actually also permitted for new construction, but only on buildings that front Easy Street. So that's one of the things that we're proposing to change with our text amendment, is to get rid of that Easy Street frontage requirement. We're still going to limit it to within the village center redevelopment area, because I think mixed use, while it maybe makes sense outside of Easy Street frontage, it's still probably best to limit that to the areas where you want to see that kind of activity in the pedestrian activation. Specifically, what this project proposes is 7 buildings, each containing 2 condominium units. The buildings along Carefree Drive would have ground floor commercial uses with 2-bedroom residential units on top, a very traditional mixed-use layout. And then you have 4 additional buildings in the rear of the property, each with 2, with the residential unit on the ground floor and on the second floor. 1 bedroom on the ground floor, 2-bedroom units on the second floor. Individual units would range from a little over 900 square feet for the 1-bedroom concept and for the commercial units. And then the second floor units would be 2 bedrooms and a little over 1,500 square feet. Each building would be 24 feet, so that's below the 25 feet contemplated by the commercial district. And then I think importantly, the site design maintains kind of a harmonious design with the existing desert landscape. We'd be able to maintain the wash that runs through the property, maintain some of the large boulders that exist currently on site, and as much of the desert foliage as we can on site, which I think is not what you would see if this was developed as a purely commercial use. They would probably try to maintain or try to take advantage of the full site. It's probably just what makes the most sense if you're going to do a commercial use here. And I lost my screen again. But I think what you're seeing is a conceptual rendering of the project. Thank you, Stacy. And you'll see the materials include stucco, that breeze block, and wood, very much that Southwest desert aesthetic that kind of makes carefree. This, you can see the commercial space. This will be on the ground floor with that Carefree Drive frontage. And I think the most likely uses on that ground floor commercial would probably be a coffee shop or yoga studio, that kind of thing. But the idea would be to maintain that sort of retail offering with the street frontage. There's another rendering of one of the different elevations and concepts. Again, this would be on the Carefree Drive frontage. The parking plan contemplates 33 total parking spaces, 11 commercial spaces on that Carefree Drive frontage to support the commercial use, and then a total of 14 spaces for residents and their guests. Each building would have either a garage or a carport. Along Carefree Drive frontage would be a garage, and then carports for the 4 buildings and residential units on the back, with guest parking on the back as well. One thing I want to note on this plan you're seeing here, we've gotten our initial comments back from planning staff and engineering staff, and a couple of things that might change are that driveway on the south side of the project will probably move south to align with Sidewinder Drive, which is just across Carefree Drive. So it might affect a couple of those parking spaces in the southwest corner of the site. And then the project will be requesting a parking reduction based on the internal capture that you have from mixed-use development. The town zoning ordinance does not currently allow for that. For mixed uses, it just says it has to be based on the number of parking spaces required for a residential use and the square footage of the commercial use. However, the conditional use permit language in the ordinance does permit town council to approve a parking reduction. Currently, it says via development agreement. We're proposing that be just approved by town council. In the case of this project, it would be via a parking agreement to both allow for the reduction in parking. I think it's really only 3 spaces as the plan is currently constituted. But it would also encompass plans for maintenance of those parking spaces that are within the right-of-way on Carefree Drive. So again, there's two requests. Would be the text amendment, which I'll go through in more detail in a moment, and then that conditional use permit to allow the new mixed use. The text amendment, and I'm sorry for all the text here, but wanted to kind of cover in detail what exactly we'd be requesting. Section 502.8b of the Carefree zoning ordinance does allow for new mixed use development in the commercial district, but as I mentioned before, it is only permitted along with properties with easy street frontage. And then there's some additional criteria which was actually established and put into the town ordinance really specifically for one project that was proposed and I don't think ultimately built. I don't know the name of that project. If you have questions about that, perhaps Stacy can help us with that. But the criteria was really focused on that project and kind of specific to that project. So our intent here was to update the criteria to be a little more broadly applicable, but still maintain some guardrails around it so that it is something that's workable for the town. Again, limited to within the village center redevelopment area and not just commercial districts throughout the town jurisdiction. So the first thing we'd be proposing was that new mixed use development was permitted on properties with a minimum size of 1 gross acre. Currently it says 1 net acre. The property is, I think, like 42,000 and change square feet, so it's just under 1 net acre, but based on the way it's currently written, it would prohibit development there. And considering this is one of the last few remaining undeveloped parcels within the redevelopment area, I think it makes sense to make that change. Second bullet there is just that easy street frontage I've discussed. We would be changing the minimum size from 1,200 square feet to 900 square feet. It's not in our view, not a substantial change, but would allow that 1-bedroom concept and again provide additional housing options within the town, and hopefully at a more attainable price point to allow for the people who work here and support the businesses in the town center to actually live here. The parking reductions requested would be permissible via a parking agreement or otherwise approved by town council and not just via a development agreement. We'd be proposing a 5-foot front setback for new mixed-use development along Carefree Drive, as opposed to the commercial district standard of 10 feet. And then we'd be eliminating some height allowances that was initially proposed and approved for this other development that would have allowed heights up to 37 feet. We, again, are staying within the bounds of the commercial district. So that's sort of a cleanup change, just getting rid of that additional height allowance and limiting it to what's permitted in the commercial district. And then there are 2 different criteria that, again, were kind of design related, focused on the specific development that was previously proposed. And then secondly, the CUP, we would be requesting kind of subject to that revised CUP criteria that we'd be amending via the text amendment. As Stacy mentioned, we held a neighborhood meeting on September 16th, so I guess about a month ago. Time flies. That was noticed in accordance with the procedures outlined in the ordinance. We had no attendees. The property owner owns a couple of different properties here in town and has a lot of relationships within the village center, and he's did some additional outreach to property and business owners and just let them know what was being proposed. My understanding is there's no concerns or opposition to the development that we're proposing. And then lastly, just to wrap it up, this is a very productive use of what is a vacant parcel in the village center. It is, in my mind, a exact perfect execution of what was approved and contemplated in the village center redevelopment plan, and we'll have all the benefits that were outlined in that redevelopment plan, providing new bodies to support new consumers, to support the businesses in the village center, activating the streets, creating that kind of dynamic environment that you want to see in your town core. Maintains the commercial frontage on Carefree Drive. The design, I think, really fits in with the aesthetic of Carefree and will be compatible with the development in the surrounding area. And then it preserves to the best of our ability, I think more so than most would do, preserves the natural aesthetic of its current desert condition, maintains the wash, maintains that the existing boulders and that the existing foliage that's there today. And lastly, we're grateful for the support of economic development staff. I think they appreciate the idea that in order for the businesses to be successful here, we need people, and a site like this that's sort of off, mid-block, it's maybe not a perfect location for a pure commercial use, and this proposed use kind of serves a dual purpose. So thank you for your patience with that, and happy to answer any questions you have.
My first question is actually to our attorney, just because I'm always suspicious of attorneys. What is the process for a text amendment?
So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so as kind of Alex did go through, they have to hold a neighborhood meeting. There'll be a public hearing before P&Z. There'll be a recommendation from P&Z to council, and then mayor and council will make the final decision on the proposed text amendment.
And that is in the code then?
That is in the code. A property owner that is going to be subject to whatever the proposed change would be can submit a request for a text amendment.
Okay, and then what is the conditional use permit requirement for this development?
There'll also be a separate application, so they have submitted a separate application. There'll be another public hearing before planning and zoning, but then the final decision is with planning and zoning.
And does the code specify a conditional use permit for, I know we have for storage, for a warehouse, we have to have a conditional use permit.
It is currently a conditional use permit application for mixed use development that is new. Is it for both? as well?
Correct.
Yeah, both.
Chairman Burns, to correct you, it's a special use permit for storage. So we do have these two sort of similar, but there is a subtle difference between them. I mean, they still are public processes, but conditional use is based on something that's allowed, assuming you meet these conditions. Special use permit, you need to have it's kind of a higher level of scrutiny in terms of nuisance and other impacts to potentially surrounding areas. And so I guess it's fair to say they're both legislative, but special use permit can be.
You can impose additional standards to mitigate any potential causes or issues they may cause.
Okay, but you can't with the conditional.
Usually you're putting those in through the text amendment. So you're saying here, we think this type of use, this mixed use development, it needs to meet the following 8, 9, 10 conditions. Provided you meet those, we believe it's an appropriate use on this land.
And I take it that legal and P&Z and economic development have worked with the applicant and we're in agreement on what the language is going to say and what the scope of the text amendment is going to say?
The applicant has submitted a text amendment. We've had comments back and forth, but ultimately it's their text amendment. So we can provide comments, thoughts. They've incorporated many, but if they don't want to incorporate any changes from staff or from legal, they can move forward with the application as presented.
Okay.
May I comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Chair Burns, we had our initial comments returned, and we had a meeting to discuss those comments after. And I think, from our perspective, we're very much aligned with the comments and are happy to make the changes that were suggested.
Okay. When you say a mixed use, thank you. When you say a mixed use, what is your vision for commercial? Is it office or is it retail, souvenir store, bike shop?
I think retail would probably be the number one goal, and
Right.
to the extent that is
How
achievable.
How big are the commercial spaces? Are they the 900 square feet?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
All of them will be 900 square feet.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Whalen.
Scott, can you come to the microphone,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
I might know more of the intricacies of square footage than Alex, so.
Yeah, well, he's only, yeah.
I know, he's only my attorney. Scott Whalen, I'm the owner of the property. The square footages for the commercial, the 3 first floor storefronts, I'm calling them storefronts, that front Carefree Drive, 2 of them are 910 to 930 plus or minus, and then there is one that's around 1100.
Oh, okay.
This square footage is designed twofold. There's parking adjacent to this first floor, so it's not just a 1,600 square foot box, let's call it. This size allows for these uses that Alex brought up. My goal would be to have some exciting retail to introduce to town. Do I feel like I have them in my back pocket and I'm bringing them in? No, I don't, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Would I default to a non-retail use, like many that exist in the area, like a yoga studio or a chiropractor or an audiologist?
Or an attorney's office?
Or an attorney's office, or a gallery? I'm going to respectfully decline on trinkets. We've reached capacity on souvenirs, in my opinion. But those would be the goal. I would love to bring something to town, since I'm 7 minutes away, something that I would like to go to as well. That is my goal for the first floor.
Okay.
And actually, I'll just add to that, because it's a good question. One of the changes I think I did not highlight, one of the changes that's currently in the conditional use permit language for mixed-use development was it has a maximum of 25% of the square footage permitted for office. We would be proposing to limit that requirement to just the easy street frontage. So development that's within the village center redevelopment area outside of easy street frontage could have more than 25% office.
So that means on the commercial, will each building stand on its own and have this determined, or is it, if you said, okay, 25%?
I'm not going to do 25% of a 900 square foot store. I'm not going to chop it up and put partition walls on it, sir.
Right, but I guess what my question is, if we're counting the 3 in the front, and let's just say for purposes of discussion, it's 2,700 square feet, right? 3 times 900. So that's the 25%. Conceptually, would the 25% apply to the 2,700, or would it apply to the 900, 900, 900? Does that make sense?
It does, and
Are we dealing with this as a, even though it's 3 buildings, or are we dealing with it as a unit?
I think we would, because it's considered that mixed use. So you would consider the whole development.
Okay.
And so for that, for your example of an attorney's office or a CPA office, currently under the CUP criteria, it wouldn't be permitted. You can only do trinket stores or other retail stores. So the idea here is, given that it's mid-block, we would make every effort to do retail, because I think that makes the most sense. But if for whatever reason that we're unsuccessful, we'd have to open up our potential tenant pool to an office user.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the group in a moment. I just have 2 or 3 more questions. One is, does the alley that's back there now become a thoroughfare?
It would be used for access, those rear 4 units.
Okay. The second question is, has the town engineer signed off on whatever you're going to do with the wash? Are you going to do anything with the wash? Put in riprap or something?
The goal is to maintain the wash. It's a cumbersome piece of land in a really good location.
Right.
So instead of paving a parking lot over it and building on top of it, I'm going to glamorize the wash, which is why the 7 little boxes are positioned the way they are. Not only the wash, but also the boulders that are in place. One that's really in place is in building B3. It's right up on the building. We want to keep that because it's visually from the street, it'll look good. And once I work in conjunction with town on having Carefree Drive more pedestrian friendly, whatever's required and whatever's going to be for the good of the order, the local pedestrians, not just residents of the project, will be able to enjoy looking down that wash because it'll be maintained.
Okay.
And to your specific question, that kind of engineering analysis would be done at the site plan process rather than this phase.
How do you allocate garage space? If there's two tenants in a building, do they flip for it when they move in? The first guy that gets there gets it, or the first guy to get home gets the garage?
I asked the exact same question, and the front units are the only ones that have actual closed garages, and those would have the two-bedroom unit on top and the commercial unit on the bottom. So those would be most likely allocated towards the residential unit. And then the rear units
Or carports?
are carports.
Okay, well, I will suspend my question.
Mr. Mr. Go ahead.
Let's start with Les.
There's some things about this project that I really like and some things I really dislike. Let me tell you the good things I like. I like the idea that this property is going to be developed. I think the 4 units in the back, which are entirely residential, are beautifully designed. I really like the sort of southwest Italianate, I'm not sure what you would call it, sort of design. I think that's really nice. What I don't particularly like is the idea that the 3 in the front look exactly like look like standalone villas, and the garage door on each of those 3, to me, if I were driving by, I would never in a million years think that there is some commercial activity. If I drove by those 3 properties on Carefree Drive and I saw that big garage door, I would say villa, residence, and if there was a little sign out there that said coffee shop or something, I'd think this is, you know, it's like a live-work space. I'm not going there. I think what this needs in the front is either a single building with a whole line of colonnades so that it signals immediately, visually, that it's a commercial piece. One of the things you could do if you don't want to do that is you could literally take these 3, flip them so that the long part in the back becomes the front, and then you have more commercial space. The garage would be in the back in a little driveway in the back for the residences. But I think the idea of having 3 separate commercial units that have a little commercial sign are going to be a failure. And let me just tell you one of the reasons. I used to live in another state. I won't name it. It's west of here, but I won't name that state. And I rented, I leased a workspace building in Carpinteria. And it had about 40 units. It was 2-story. And it was a very modern, beautiful building. And it was clearly workspace. The people who were in it were artists and weavers and potters and photographers and all of that. There was absolutely no walk-in commercial activity in that building at all. Every single person who had space, workspace there, took their products somewhere else and sold them. So in my view, there's not going to, this kind of project with 3 separate residential mixed commercial are not going to generate any kind of tax revenue for the town of Carefree at all. It would be minimal. So I would like to see a standalone building in the front, and if you flipped it over, you would get rid of the driveways, you would end up with more parking in the front, have them go around, park in the back, and I think that would solve the problem. That's what I would like to see. For what that's worth.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. We can take a look and see what the options are.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions.
Please.
A couple to the gentleman and one to the staff. Is there going to be a security system attached to this, or some kind of a secured entrance? And the reason why I ask that is, given the location, the overall location, this is surrounded by open commercial activity, basically. And so if I'm living in one of these, you know, I would have some concerns about how safe, how secure is the property that I'm buying and that I'm living in. Yeah, whatever. Right now, I just don't know whether there's been consideration given to that, number one. Number two, I was kind of puzzled as to why 4 carports and why 3 garages. And the gentleman to my right raised good points about that. So that's a second question. I mean, you know, we're not a town that's really into carports per se. So that may be something that you want to think about, et cetera. And I think his point is well taken in terms of, it's kind of hard to distinguish between what's the residential portion and what's the commercial portion. My question to staff, quite frankly, is, we heard at the last council meeting that there's going to be a revision to the zoning ordinance. So how does your request for a conditional use permit and how does this text amendment fit into that in terms of, are we going to be reviewing this again? Or is the consultant going to be reviewing this again? Or if we approve this, or if this gets approved, does it just become part of the revised zoning ordinance?
Do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I'm happy to go first. As it relates to security, at this time, we're not proposing any gates or walls or fences. I don't know if, Scott, if you've considered any other aspects of that, but
Surrounding businesses are closed now. I'm not concerned.
Well, your new residents might be.
yeah, and we can look at different options for that. You know, we still have a whole site planning process to go through, and we can get to that level of detail. But I think it's a fair point, especially for those units that are accessed from the alley.
Thank you.
And as for carports, initially I think they maybe all had garages or maybe all had carports, but they
Garage doors are a requirement by the town of Carefree.
on the frontage.
Frontage.
Yeah. And for the carports, given kind of the duplex concept, it just didn't seem practical.
From a design standpoint, it might make more sense to have garage doors for 7 minutes, right?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the back units is you won't be seeing the carports. Certainly not from the street frontage.
I have a couple questions too. Is it, I'm trying to understand, are all of the units, both commercial and residential, intended to be rental? There would never be a building that could be owned and either occupied by the owner or himself or herself renting out the units?
It would all be condo plats. They would all be individually owned units. Somebody could theoretically own.
Which is required
yeah.
by the town.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the two other concerns that I have, actually on the gated comment, the view isn't gated. So that's a much bigger development. So the idea that this would, I mean, I live in a gated community and I like it, but I don't think that it's as much a concern when you already have this other relatively high-end townhouse condominium community that is ungated. So I don't think this needs to be gated. My only concern, I think the designs are very attractive, but as I was driving by there, there's a sense of greenery there. The only greenery, frankly, in the area, because with all the buildings in the view, the post office building, Bosch's, and all the others, it sort of takes away the only greenery. So I would hope that there might be some way of keeping some sort of plants there. That's the one concern. And the other concern is the traffic, believe it or not, can get a little hairy. There's an awful lot of people in this town who don't understand how to drive around the little circles. And they go the wrong direction by the library, by the post office. They come in the lot that says "Do not enter." So this is another sort of challenge for everybody else who's in the area. That's all.
I have one question, and that was, what are your signage going to be?
It's a good question. We actually had some comments about that on the plan we submitted. At this point, all the signage is purely conceptual, so I don't think we have any kind of firm plan to share. You talking about the commercial signage? Yeah, I imagine there would be some kind of monument sign up front, along with some signage above each commercial unit, but we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet.
And I got one other comment, and that is there going to be a possibility that these could become short-term rentals? Which I would hate.
I'm a traditional landlord. I don't do Airbnb. And I'll sign anything if need be.
It's possible to put something like that in CCNRs, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just get back to
Right.
getting staff to answer my question.
Thank you. Commissioner Braun, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. I have a concern that we have a number of vacant space currently, small spaces in the town center. And we're adding 3 small commercial spaces really off of the town center, kind of. They're on a side road almost, basically, in my idea for what the town center is. So that's a concern as to the ability to rent those to something that will produce income for the town. Secondly, we have a parking problem in this town as it is, we're told, and now we're being asked to reduce the parking requirements for this. Those 2 things bother me.
For the first comment there, I think if it were up to the property owner, he'd probably develop this purely as residential use. But I think it's the town's vision for this property to have some commercial component to it.
But it seems more likely that that's going to end up as an office space. And that's an opinion, it's nothing else. But it just doesn't seem that there's going to be walking traffic down there to find a commercial space.
I'll have to give it the old college try, and then maybe I'll be breaking the law and putting an office tenant in and exceeding the 25%, because how long can I stay vacant?
Well, that's part of the reason we proposed the change to the text, the ordinance, to allow more than 25% office outside of Easy Street, because I think it does make sense to maintain that for that, the desire to have pure kind of retail offerings along the Easy Street frontage. But for a mid-block use like this, maybe it does make sense to have, again, that kind of a CPA or a lawyer's office or something like that. But I think we're certainly going to make every effort, or Scott's going to make every effort to.
I don't doubt that, don't
Yeah.
misunderstand me. But I guess, maybe this is heresy, but do we need that commercial space, or could you use that as residential?
I would much prefer to have it residential, because it would get filled up immediately.
And I guess the town then has to figure out whether that's better for it to have a full development, or to have 3 commercial spaces, which I think are going to be difficult to get generated sales tax out of.
Commissioner Brown, those are very good observations. I think there's been some leadership input that has had concern about losing a commercial property, because I think we're all sensitive to the state of commercial generating revenues for the town. But interesting observation, it is a small square footage that's being proposed. But again, I think that they were, the applicant, to speak for you, was responding to other input that they had received. So, but definitely noted. I did want to get back to Commissioner Nimsky's question. And to answer your question, the timing is a little odd. But the property owner does have the right to make the request. They have been watching how the town has been approving development plans, particularly the redevelopment plan that looked to that potentially being a residential development, and they looked to want to move forward, whether they knew or didn't know that we were updating our zoning ordinance. Again, you're right, it might be something that we'll have to address as we move together through the zoning ordinance update process with our consultant, and see if everything sort of aligns. I think that Alex brought up an important point, is that we have to make sure what we're updating, what this text eventually becomes, is applicable to the town center and maybe not just to a specific project. So maybe the timing is good that we can work together on this and make sure that the language meets everybody's goals.
Okay, thank you. If I may, I also want to weigh in on the discussion of, part of this being commercial, part of this being residential. I would be hard pressed to argue that having 3 or 4 or even 7 900 square foot commercial enterprises is going to generate a huge amount of revenue, particularly when we begin to talk about potentially using some of it as office space. The CPA doesn't generate a lot of revenue, et cetera. And also hearing that, is it Scott?
Scott?
That Scott would have preferred upfront to develop, 7 residential enterprises, right?
The original application was, the original concept was 7 units, because after doing all the geotechnical and all the investigative work with the site, the wash, the boulders, this isn't just a fun pad to show up and get some density on. There's a lot of issues that I have to embrace, otherwise just walk away.
Right.
So those boxes are positioned a certain way. I believe then instead of 2-story townhomes, because I know there's a demand for a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment up here, permanent residents, not seasonal residents, I decided with my architect team to chop them in half and have the first floor a 1-bedroom with a garage and the second floor a 2-bedroom. So I have parking, I have 2 apartments. I did volley that over to the town, and I believe I received that even with all of the conditional use permit and text amendment, I still needed to somehow incorporate a commercial component to this site, to this 0.97 acre site. I don't ever think, and I don't think anyone in this room thinks, that this is an economic engine for tax revenue. I believe if I have apartments there with full-time residents.
Condos. Just for clarity, it would be condominiums. These are not.
Yes, they have to be called condos because you can't technically build apartments in Carefree. They have to be, the project has to be condo platted.
Each unit would be individually.
I guess I'm struggling with what was the reason to require that part of your development be commercial?
The town.
Can somebody address that?
Well, in fairness, Commissioner Nimsky, I think that the applicant had reached out to some of the leadership in the community, and because originally this is a commercial property, I think the town is always sensitive to giving up commercial opportunity for something that's non-revenue generating. But it's true, I mean, through time we have seen, and through our policy plans, we have seen that potentially this could be a residential only community. You know, staff isn't driving this commercial component, but we are hearing that is an important aspect to some of the council members. So we've had that conversation, and they've been including that in their development. These are interesting observations. You know, not knowing what they were looking to do. I mean, originally in the they wanted to do a mixed-use concept. Did we know it was just going to be 3 buildings, or would it have been all of the buildings? I mean, it just, as it came forward to us, it was the 3 buildings. And I think reasoning-wise, having the frontage on Carefree Drive makes sense. And again, as staff, we believe that you want to pursue tax-generating uses. So we're trying to find the compromise. But you're right, I don't disagree with you. If it seems like it isn't going to work, you know, let's think a little bit more about it.
I mean, I'm all for generating revenue, but I also know and observe on a daily basis we have a lot of empty space in this town. And so it's not like we're really looking for additional commercial space at this point, rather than trying to fill what we have.
Yep.
Anyways, thank you.
Understood. I mean, you know, they came to us with the application, they had commercial in it. They're the experts to determine, you know, how successful that would be.
And I guess just to piggyback on the conversation, I would reiterate what we saw in the Village Center redevelopment plan that, you know, the experts did look at and did identify this site as I think having the most potential for strictly residential use. But we're kind of limited to what we can do with the existing zoning and the existing regulatory framework. But I think, you know, the redevelopment plan does say we're all for generating additional revenue, and perhaps as solely residential, it will help support the existing businesses and generate revenue that way. I think,
On the-
regardless it will with the residential component that's part of this proposal.
On the small commercial units, I spent the last week in 2 historic towns back east, Ligonier, Pennsylvania, and Lebanon, Ohio. And they're restored to their original date, which is a couple hundred years ago. And there are a number of small, crafty type, individualized shops that do very well. A custom jeweler, an Irish shop, a craft shop, knitting shop, and they all seem to do very well in both towns, and they add to the ambiance of the town. You don't have a big box store in the middle of Lebanon, Ohio. It wouldn't fit. But the stores have been going there for a number of years, and the same stores are there, and they're filled with customers. So I think that fits the ambiance of Carefree as well.
I'm going to step in here. I got 3 wrap-up questions, and then I'm going to move on. Question 1 is, can we get copies of your presentation?
Absolutely.
The second one is, what does this last page in your materials mean? I am at a loss. Drive times and units.
Oh, that is from our traffic impact study. And
Okay, what generally, without going into a quarter discussion, let's do a nickel discussion.
I think the takeaway from that slide was showing that if this were to be developed purely as a commercial use, there would be a lot more trips generated than as a mixed use.
Okay. My last then question is, what is the timeline? What can we expect? When will we see you again, roughly?
I know you're looking at me, but I
Well,
think
I'm looking
actually
at
the
both.
question is to Alex at the moment. We've done staff has done a first review. We've had a good kind of comment resolution discussion. Ball is sort of in their court to resubmit to us.
Yeah, we wanted to have this discussion, get feedback from the commission to see if there were any other additional changes that need to be made beyond what planning staff included in their comments. I think there's been some interesting discussion here today in comments, so we'll probably want to revisit what that looks like if we move forward with kind of the plan that we've have here today. Again, I might throw that back to Stacy to see when you think, assuming we resubmit soon, I would say next.
3 months? I mean, I'm just,
I
Yeah.
don't need 3 months.
okay,
I'm ready to go.
okay.
I have a question for Stacy.
Well,
Stacy, could these be turned into workspace units, or do we need a conditional use permit to do workspace?
Well,
Or do
I think
Do we
this
have that
mixed,
ability now?
well, Chairman Hardy, I think this mixed-use concept sort of lends itself to this workspace. I mean, in fact, because we're talking about such a small square footage, again, I think that goes to the developer if that's sort of in their business plan. But I think right now, I mean, to me, a workspace, it's a mixed-use concept. So yes, I would say that
So it
would be
could
viable.
It could be included if they decided they
They
wanted
could
to
craft
make
their
that
language.
proposal to us. Okay.
They could craft their language that way, correct. I appreciate Scott's willingness. He's ready to go. I mean, I think there's, in fairness, still a bit of work on their end before they're ready to resubmit. So, it usually takes us 3 to 4 weeks for a review. So that's how this kind of marches along, but probably in the next few months. So.
Okay.
I'd like to say thank you, and it looks beautiful, and I really hope it works, because I think this could be an absolute little gem for our little gem of a town.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Appreciate that.
That being said, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for attending. Let's keep Carefree green. I love it. I do not have any announcements. Do you?
I do have an announcement, please.
Okay.
And,
Share your announcement.
I will try to make it brief so we can move on to the next meeting. But as some of you may know, at Town Council last week on the 7th, the contract to update our zoning ordinance was approved. We've hired Michael Baker International to lead us through that 18-month process. And but I did want to speak to the commission. We had a member state that they didn't realize that we were moving forward with this effort. And did stem from the general plan. It's a general plan to the strategic plan that identified this to be a fiscal year project. This fiscal year, as well as identified in the budget. We talked about it quite a bit, called out a line item for it. I do take responsibility if I didn't bring this forward enough to sort of remind the commission that it was something that was in the works. But I just want you to always know that if you have any questions on anything that's going on in the town or anything that's part of a zoning effort, please feel free to reach out. But hopefully, you're excited about this. If it is a surprise, I apologize. But I do believe that it's something that council has been aware of and has been moving forward to happen within this next year as well as following the next. So,
Will that zoning overhaul include an update to the citizen participation ordinance?
thank you, Chairman Burns. It does.
Mhm.
It's both. Yes.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any other announcements? Entertain a motion?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the P and Z adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Thank you very much.
5 minutes?
Yeah, let's do 4 minutes. I'm gonna
Oh.
move this along, you know?
Aren't they cute?
Thanks, guys.
Frisky here.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the project.
I think we're making progress.
Let's see where we are. Regular meeting, planning and zoning. The Economic Development Advisory Board will be called to order. Boom. We'll do a virtual roll call. First item of business is Economic Development Advisory Board Work Plan Update. And I assume Mr. Prokopek is going to take us through this.
Chairman, commissioners,
Okay.
thank you. We'll just walk through. So as part of the council strategic plan, and when we look at the Economic Development Advisory Board, the predominance of what we deal with are things that have been approved by council. So in this case, what we do is we're looking at the things that have been approved through council through the strategic plan. But prior to that, we had some things that we call legacy stuff that were part of the original economic development work plans, which were part of the last economic council strategic plan. It was done a little bit differently, where there was a specific economic development work plan that it was associated that I got approved every 2 years. In this case, we kind of flipped it around a little bit. There's a strategic plan that's been created by council that has more specific goals and objectives. And from there, then we've taken those and we've created what we call the Economic Development Advisory Board Work Plan to kind of further put some stuff around those particular goals and put some dates and time frames and deliverables and all those types of things. And so that's what we're going to go through today. So we did that originally in February. We had a calendar that was made along with this work plan, and we knew this was going to be kind of fluid as we worked through things. But the goal is to make sure that we understand what's on the agendas, what's coming up, the things that we need to do, what's been done, what still needs to be completed, what's shifting and moving. But we can always have some kind of idea of the timeframes and dates and where we are in the process of these things. And so that's what we're going to go through. And so we did this last time, I believe in June. It's a good time for us to go back through this again. It also gives us an opportunity to go through all the different things we're working on, and whatever questions you have, you feel free to ask those questions. And so circulation and parking is actually one of the legacy things that we're continuing to work on. It came out of the signage program, and the last thing we did was we had that workshop and we had some recommendations, and we were supposed to come back. And so the way you're going to see the structure is the last things that we kind of talked about as far as where we were in process and what those dates are on the left, and on the right are kind of like what I'm proposing, where we are, where it actually is today, and what those dates look like they're turning into. And so we had the P&Z Town Council workshop. We worked through the summer with Kimley Horn to try to get them feedback on things that were related to that plan. It was a lot of stuff to get through, and they were supposed to get me something back in time for this meeting to be able to present to you. I did get something returned from them last week, but it was so close to, or a week before, but it was so close to when I had to get my materials in for this meeting. I just didn't have a chance to really look through it all and be able to put a really good presentation together. So I'll just really have to do that back in November, and that way I could do a really good presentation on that, and we'll focus on those things, and then try to hopefully get that into December. So, but we did get the draft back from Kimley Horn.
Question? Question?
Go for it.
Steve, we've been talking for some time about restriping Tom Darlington from Bloody Basin up to Cave Creek Road. Is that part of what we're going to be seeing in November, restriping that,
So
the western part of that section of road?
Yeah, so what we'll see is actually for Tom Darlington and Cave Creek Road, the 15% drawings of what they could or should look like into the future. That would include striping. So whether we restripe it or not, or how we go about doing that, is then up for discussion beyond that. So we'll sit down with the engineering staff. We'll start putting together capital improvement projects that address the things that are inside this conceptual plan.
Has a decision been made to restripe from Bloody Basin to Cave Creek Road on Tom Darlington? Has that actually been made so that's further steps can follow from that.
Yeah, there's been no decisions made on that,
No
from my
decisions.
understanding.
Is
Yeah.
that something that we need to address before it goes to town council?
It's something we could talk about when we bring the plan to the group in November. So those are the great comments. And then as we get that plan in, then you'll be making your recommendations. So we can get that plan approved. So it'll be your guys making recommendations to council, and then from there, the council approving along with whatever your recommendations are, or any conditions, or anything that you want to include into that
Are
conversation.
you saying we should wait until we get this report from
Correct.
whoever is doing the report?
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Yep.
So, you know, we had some kind of a presentation. I don't know if it was a draft presentation or what they called it at the time, by the consultants who are working on this. Is there a target date as to when they will give us a final report?
They just did. That's what I was saying. They already provided it to me. I just didn't have a chance to get through it. It came in a week behind of when I thought I was going to get it, and I couldn't make this meeting and give you a good presentation
So
on
in
it.
November, we will get the final report?
Yeah.
Can
So
we
in
get it
November you'll get
before?
that.
Can
Yep.
we get it before, if you have it?
Yeah,
Can
I'll
you-
send it. I'll
can you
send it to you
us?
as part of the packet that goes ahead. And if you want it, I'll get it to you sooner than that. I have it now, so I just need to look through it.
So, in your mind's eye, at the November meeting, are we going to consider and make a recommendation, or are we going to hear about it and make a recommendation in December? What's your pleasure?
You know, it really is going to depend on when we get to that meeting. If you guys say, hey, we're good with all of this, and here's some commentary, when let's take this to council in December, we can do that. If you say, look, we would like another month to discuss this,
Okay.
then we'll go with that route. I mean, look, it's been 4 years. I don't think another month's going to make or break us either way. I just want to get it done right.
Well, if
Okay.
you have it now, and let's say you go through it, and it takes you another week or so to go through it, couldn't you send it to us?
Yeah.
So that we're prepared to discuss it in November?
Yeah, you'll have it ahead of time. Yeah.
The other thing is, let's say that they make 35 recommendations. Is this the sort of process where we can vote and approve 10 of them and defer on the others? Or are you saying that we have to do the whole plan or none of it?
There's no doing the plan. It's an outline for what we want to accomplish over time. I mean, the plan might take 20 years to do.
So
And
they make, this plan is going to have a whole series of recommendations, right?
that's all it's going to be, is a recommending plan. But when we're dealing with infill development, for instance, or we're going to redevelop maybe the town hall site, we know if we need to make improvements to the public infrastructure, the roadways, we want to add in walkway. All those things are contemplated as part of that development. As we're looking to do capital improvement projects, a roadway project or whatever it is in town center, we know that we can look to do these other things, or we can make these their own capital improvement projects. And so what we would do is once we have this plan done, we can then use it as a backbone for creating a strategy for getting them all done. And part of it could be part of the public CIP. Some of it will be built when commercial properties develop. It could be done in conjunction with both of those things. So there's a lot of creative ways that we'll go about trying to figure out how that infrastructure will be built. But this way we know what it's going to look like. We have an idea of what we want when somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to develop this corner. Okay, well, cool, but you're also going to have to do this too. And our expectations are these things.
Yeah, this isn't really a substitute for the general plan, right? This is just a piece of it. So they had a statement of work.
Yep.
They went and did their thing, and now they're coming back with addressing each individual component of that statement of work with their recommendation, right?
But recall that we had a meeting on this topic, and we gave instruction as to where we wanted this to go. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, so we had the workshop.
And so-
Yep.
And they had, and
Right.
they're back redrafting or modifying or massaging, whatever. And now we're gonna see the revised copy.
Right, that's my point, but
Yeah.
it's not the overall,
Yeah,
it's
so
not the overall general plan.
no, so this will actually become a component of the redevelopment plan, because this was out of the redevelopment plan process. So what we'll do is we'll make this as like an exhibit to that, and then that way all the information's together. And
Just so I'm clear, so we're talking about, they're coming back with a circulation and parking plan, is that right?
correct. And this is
And
reflects
that's a
all the
component-
conversation.
That's a component of the larger plan. So if we have a meeting on November, and the consensus of the board is that we ought to now do items 6, 12, and 34, and we vote
Yeah, you're not gonna, this is just looking at the overall visual, the framework. You're looking, this is the cover of the puzzle box, right? You're gonna approve the cover of the puzzle box. This is what we want the picture to look like. Then we get it beyond that. We'll start, you can make recommendations. I think the low-hanging fruit, or I think the things that the town should be addressing first are these things. Those are good recommendations. But we still have to figure out how we do that, right? That's the next step.
It is still a plan. It has to go through the process where the council will decide what they're going to do and what they're going to fund.
Correct.
It's not, we're not making the decision.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
There's no dollars to spend attached to this plan.
Right.
There'll be a dollar amount of what it's gonna cost to build it, which is gonna be a lot. But again, it's not you don't do it tomorrow. It's one of those things we'll do over time.
I sat on that stakeholder committee board meeting 3, 4, 5, 6 times. It's an overall plan of sidewalks, some parking, et cetera. They got more signs than you'll ever want or need. So you're going to have some recommendations to make to improve it, I believe.
Okay.
Any other questions? And then we have the build-out analysis, which is on here, and we went through this last time about, and then the whole build-out analysis was looking at like what's the total capacity of the town when we are at full build-out, what that looks like, and we went through that. And to be honest with you, this is the same spreadsheet that I provided last time, and nothing's really changed since the last time we met. And one of the questions that was asked was, part of this timing looks at, the northeast corner and whether or not how that development is moving along. And when you look at this, when we look at that particular part of it, at Carefree and Cave Creek Road, we didn't show anything really happening until 2027 anyhow. So we were already conservative as saying, hey, we're not going to count on that money. So we're still in the time frames for looking at what that for that particular development. So at this time, we're kind of like, there's really nothing that has changed. And so what impacts this, when you look at the town center, things that are going to impact this are going to be the development of potentially the town hall site, maybe some other redevelopment opportunities that we're looking at. But to one point, we can try to monitor and manage leased space, like the A space is left. And so, yeah, that's going to put a little bit of a hole in these particular revenue projections. And so I can try to update these, but that's really not a part of the build out. That's just more about where we are and timing of things. And so we'll continue to try to get those spaces filled. But when we look at build out, I think we're still, on schedule for what this plan particularly called for.
But since you got the NEC up here, where are we? Any news, any updates?
Yeah, so they've actually, so I had a conversation, I talk with them weekly, and they've had a lot of conversations with tenants, and things are actually moving along better than they were a few months ago. And so it's been very positive in the conversations as far as tenancy goes. Again, it's good looking at an outside in, inside out approach versus, whether they build the interior buildings or maybe just focus on the exterior for now. But the key is they want to try to get started as soon as possible.
Steve, what was the reason that the proposal that they put before the board was just to do part of it and not the entire project? Why did they?
For the site plan? Yeah, in the site plan, they just weren't 100% sure what that secondary site was going to look like, so we just got the approval for the parcel A, right?
Yeah, just the corner parcel.
Yep.
So, no offense, but we're moving along, I've heard now for, 90, 120 days?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
No, they're still committed to the project. They're still working on it. They have some leases signed, and it's the status of the market right now has been very difficult. It's not just here; it's everywhere. Commercial's been stymied for the last 6 to 7 months, and we're just dealing with things that they're maybe outside of everybody's control, but they're 100% committed to the project. I'm not worried about that, and they've told me as such. So. The nature of the business, it's.
Okay.
Yep.
Steve, just so I understand, The 1,000,003 that you have at Cave Creek and Carefree Drive, that's existing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's Lowe's and,
That's it, thank
Yeah.
you.
Any news on, the guy vacated at the CBS?
he's out.
Anything happening on that? Do we have any prospects?
We don't have any prospects at this time, yeah. We had to wait till he got out, because we weren't sure how long it was gonna take to actually get him out.
It's finally cleared up.
Yeah, so he's out.
Who owns that property? Is that, does CBS own that?
No, it's owned by private ownership, and their only interest right now is to lease that building versus potentially sell it. And I know there's been a lot of interest for others to buy it, so we're working to see if we can get something that could potentially lease it that's productive. And then the facade program, we received 2 applications. One application was approved, and we're just awaiting for the final signature on that. Yeah, so I'll just, might as well, the application was, I'll come back in November and I'm gonna do a full update on what the project is and where it is and all that, but it was for Spanish Village to put up shade sail structures, in the area, the seating area over by Keeler's. And so what it'll do is not only provide additional shade because that shade tree got damaged, but it'll also allow for, extended seating times, for Keeler's and for the area as well. And so, one of the nice things about it is when we looked at the facade program, there were two kind of prongs to it. One prong being, the idea of light removal and all that. The other one being of economic sustainability. And so, not only is this going to help the whole overall project to the aesthetics of the area, but it also has a really nice economic component that they've built into it. So we'll go through that more in detail when we get to the project. I'm just waiting for the final scope of work on that, and then I'll get you that information. But it was approved through the committee, and I've given them their notification that it was approved, and she just got back to me today that she's getting the final scope of work and should have that to me in the next couple of days. We'll sign the little agreement that we have, and we'll get that moving forward.
There was another application?
Oh, and the second application was for 100 Easy Street to do some improvements there. There were some things that we had to discuss further, and so we've agreed that we're going to put this into the next quarter round of projects.
100 is what?
Is a post office building.
Oh.
Yep. And then the town hall redevelopment. Timeframes are shifting here. We had, the open house in September, and then we decided that we wanted to add in October. Then we had kind of more internal conversation that November was probably a better time frame and date to let people, because a lot of people don't get back till all the way to the end of October. So we wanted that secondary date for all the people who aren't in town to be able to come into town. So that shifted all of our dates back. And so I just wanted to let you know we've scheduled this November 6th is the date for the next open house that we'll have. And then we're still going through and getting stakeholder input. So that just pushes all of our dates back. So we'll have that in November. I'm going to try to get back in December. I know it's aggressive, but I'll try to get something back in December that takes all this information, reflects it. I might not have a draft RFP if we're going that route, but at least if it looks like we're heading this direction, give you all the details and potential terms that we'd want to consider that we'd put into an RFP and then go from there.
In thinking about this, you can update us in November at our November meeting next month based upon what happens on November 6th, right?
Correct.
And then why don't we think about for a January meeting, kicking around the draft RFP.
Okay.
As opposed to, I just think that the
Too
turnaround in
soon.
December is too fast.
Okay.
And then we'll see what happens in January and look to maybe a February recommendation to the council.
That works. And
Okay.
just to let you know,
I just don't want, I'd rather take the time and get it done, and as we get closer to the holidays, it's gonna get more crazy.
Yeah. And I also had a contractor come in and take a look at what potentially could look like to build on this site here based on just some parameters. So we get at least a ballpark idea of what the costs are. And so I'll have that information, probably in the next few weeks.
Okay.
And construction costs are not going down at this time. They're crazy.
So as part of that, are you guys going to put together, lack of a better word, I hate the term plan all the time. Are you going to put together how much square footage you guys need?
Yeah.
Town administration, council space, whatever.
Yep. So one of the things, we'll get the kind of a ballpark estimate, kind of a good ballpark. And then what we would do is probably look, I was talking with CJ, the engineer, he handles all the capital improvement stuff, that we probably should end up doing that anyhow. So what we can do is hire potentially a contractor to just maybe work with an architect. And I like to work with a contractor because they'll get you the cost to build something, and then work on the space planning that way. So I think that's what way we'll approach that. But we can have more conversations. But that is the goal, and it wouldn't cost that much money to get us that kind of detail of what we would like to do. And particularly if we're going to look at this building and looking at how we connect to it and utilize the existing bathrooms, existing conference rooms, and all that. That's a good question. And then the market position strategy. This is actually moving forward. And so just want to let shifting over to the right here. We've had the conversations about why we're doing it and the next steps. And so we did, instead of going through an RFQ process, we actually we were able to communicate with some folks, and through a scope of work, we were able to get a contract done without having to go to an RFQ because we got a really nice contract term for a really, really excellent consultant. And so we were able to kind of move this along a little bit quicker. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on who we hired and where we are in the process and what's going on. And so we actually did hire this group. And as part of what they're doing now, they're actually going to be coming back in November. They've already agreed to do it. They're going to come in and do a presentation on all of their current findings to date. And so that will be on the schedule for sure. And so,
who are the people and how did we get them?
yeah, that's what I'm going to go through right now. So,
Hold on a second. You're saying that next month we're going to get what?
yeah, so I'll let me go through where we are, and then you'll understand what you're going to get next month. So what we did is, obviously this is all in the perspective of creating a destination retail environment for the town center. And what we wanted to do is look at our tenant mix. We wanted to look at the building products. We wanted to look at the types of visitation, the markets that are accessible, the markets that we should be going at. And it's kind of like when you look at positioning, it's a little bit of truth telling about yourself. And it's a little bit about understanding what other people think about you from the outside, and then trying to mirror all these things together to what it is you want to become and what we think we can become, and then figuring out how we go after the customers that we want to have in the town center. And that's kind of a high level look at doing it. So we actually hired a group called Evolve Ventures, and they are experts at this. So the two, it's Amy Malloy and Heather Persone, they have done this for like Westcor and Peterson Group and all these major retail developers. They have specifically worked on repositioning of like Paradise Valley Mall, and they're looking at things like Arrowhead Mall, and how you take existing assets that maybe have had a long life and how you reposition those to make sure that they're economically viable for the future. That is their expertise, and so we were able to hire them for just a little bit. I think it was like $12,500. So it's the mayor was able to just execute that particular contract. I had a lot more than that budgeted in the budget. It was actually a really good deal. The reason they were able to come in a little bit lower was because Amy is actually, I think, the treasurer for the local ULI, and remember I came and talked to you guys about maybe bringing ULI in and doing all that, and you said, hey, yeah, the Urban Land Institute. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, Mike, you weren't here. So we talked to them about maybe coming in and doing what's called an EDTAP, Economic Development Technical Advisory Panel. We did one in 2013. They were thinking about doing a 2.0, which really was the framework for the Village Center master plan at the time, now the Village Center redevelopment plan and all the things that were in there. And then the Economic Development Advisory Board basically said, yeah, I think that's too soon for that. We really need to take that intermediate step and really do more fact finding and digging and a little bit more information before we get back into that exercise. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come in and I provided them all the information for Town Center, as much information as they've asked for it as I can provide. We also created contacts within the community for them to be able to work with, including staff, but also Joe Gemmell was one of the external contacts because she's a resident, property owner, and a business owner. And so she's kind of sat in all the initial conversations with them. And Joe has had the opportunity to say that she wanted to create more of a working group for property owners. And so this was a great foray for her to be able to utilize this exercise to be able to have that communication. And so Amy has been working on the internal side of things. And so she's already reached out to a lot of businesses and property owners in the town center. And she's doing a lot of interviews with them to kind of figure out, their perspective on the commercial for town center, what they see, where the future is, where the roadblocks are, all of those things that will help make this become a great community. She's talking to property owners, business owners. She's going to start doing staff interviews. Some of you probably already may have gotten, or you're going to be getting emails or phone calls from Amy. So she's going to interview all of you. She's interviewing all of the council. And so we're going to try to make this as, widespread as possible to get as much stakeholder input on what we feel this town center is going to make this town center tick moving forward. And it's a lot of truth telling that comes on.
Yeah. And I'm going to defer to Peter because he was the one who brought it up at one of the previous economic board meetings. Yeah, because we talked about this before, and I think you were the one who mentioned that maybe we ought to have a number of, I call them focus group studies, citizen focus group studies.
Yeah.
You called it something else. Where we invite the public in and get their philosophy, their ideas, what they think would make this town work better from a business development, economic development standpoint. You remember that conversation, Peter? Yeah. And so I assume that would happen either at the same time of this, ideally. It probably, if I was running it, it probably would have happened prior to hiring a consultant. But is that still your intent, to have those kinds of focus groups?
That actually could work. We just have the focus groups and then have Amy and Heather be a part of those focus groups. They can just listen in and see what those, I think there'd actually be a lot of value to that. And I'm sure they'd be open to do it, so.
I mean, when we first talked about this,
Yeah.
I think there was a consensus that said the people who are going to be the ones who kind of have some good ideas
Yeah.
are the ones who are either going to be shopping in Carefree or not in Carefree.
Right.
Because right now, we've got a lot of out-migration when it comes to retail
Yeah.
purchases.
Yeah, we're always going to have a public component, but I think maybe having the public component while they're doing their input research
I would
could be
strongly
helpful.
recommend that we move forward with that part of it.
Okay.
And you can integrate it into this or not, because I guess at this point, we've got the consultant whether we want it or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
and to that point and to your slide here, I think that we were more open to, rather than pigeonhole everything as being a destination retail, which would include restaurants, right?
Right.
That we were a little broader on that in terms of what are the citizens' needs as well.
Right.
Not that we're just putting out the schlocky, whatever, come to Carefree and buy a souvenir.
Right.
We also wanted whatever our residents need as well.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up because of your first line of perspective there.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I'll get her to work on that. That's good. And this is why we're having these conversations, right?
Yeah, this is great.
Yep. And
And so you're thinking of, she'll come back in our November meeting and give us some thoughts, or?
yeah, she'll start giving you some updates and some thoughts then, and then maybe what we can do is look in November, a little bit later in November, to try to have that input meeting, and then she can take all that information and she'll give us a final report probably back in December or January.
And when does What's the time frame for her talking to each one of us? When is that gonna
I just got an email today.
Yeah,
Okay,
so the emails for you and Mary were, for some reason, got messed up. So she just asked me, she said, hey, they got bounced back, so I gotta go look at it, and you'll be getting them.
okay.
Yep. And then on the other side of it, Heather, her partner, has been going out to brokers and developers outside of Carefree, just in the general marketplace. People who do this stuff for a living, and investors and all those types. And she's getting information about what they think about Carefree as well. Like, what's your perspective of it? What would make you want to put your business there, or take a client there, or invest there, or build a building, or own a building? And so she's asking all of those questions, and so that's going to be interesting to just kind of get the outside views world of what they think we are. You know, when you live in it, you're so close to it, you know it so well. But other people might have different ideas, or the external world might have a different impression. And so it's twofold. One is you're getting that valuable information, but the other one is it's exposing all of those people through a non-salesy way of getting them exposed to, hey, we're doing stuff in Carefree. They want to do stuff. They want your opinion. They want you to be part of it, potentially. Take a look at it. And so it's kind of a twofold process there. And then at the end of the day, the deliverable will be, a report and presentation that they'll provide. Again, we'll be focused on tenant and commercial mix, market sector opportunity. And that is looking at, so we talk about destination, but we got to separate tourism from destination, because tourism is one thing and it's just a component of it. The other part of it is looking at people who are within 20 minutes in the market, who are people who are within an hour in the market. There's 5 million people that live in the valley. How do we tap into that? That should be something that's easy to get and that's repetitive, right? How can we get revisitism in the community? And at the same time, I think to your point, how do we develop whatever it is here that is usable for the local population?
Did you, kind of a side, did you ever follow up with that niche ice cream place I sent you?
Yeah, I've reached out to them. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'll continue to
Because they
keep.
just announced that they were opening one in Tempe.
Yeah, so I'll reach back out to them again.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did reach out to the ice cream guys. Yep.
Once this happens, right, and the consultant has a draft project, and then we get a finished project, what's the plan beyond that?
Yeah, so the plan beyond that is for us to be able to take that information to one of the things that we've been working on and discussing is it makes it a lot easier when you fully understand and everybody is kind of on board with what it is. We have more consensus and more alignment about what it is we want to accomplish with the commercial. And it comes to a lot of things, right? We start looking at the types of tenants that we want to be here. It allows you to be a little bit more selective. And instead of trying to throw a fishing net, we're going to be fishing for the things that we really want to get that are really going to drive the needle here. And part of it could be a strategy for marketing to go out and get investors. Part of it's going to be going out and getting the types of tenants we want to see. It's going to be along those lines, but we just need to make sure that we look at all the various different opportunities that are going to make this a better retail environment. And so when we start talking about promotion, you can go out and promote to businesses. You can try to have a marketing campaign to get people to come here. But if you're not targeted and you don't understand what is going to bring people here, or what you can actually put here to bring people, it's kind of hard. You're just kind of shooting in the wind. And so what we're trying to do is be a little bit more thoughtful about how we look at the market segments, what we're going to be able to build here, and go after a multi-pronged approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, typically marketing is divided in a couple of different things, right?
Yep.
There's the transactional piece, which is called marketing per se. And then there's the image development piece, right?
Right.
Because you got to know what you're selling before you go out and sell it. So are they also going to be working on that part?
Yeah, so they will be giving us recommendations for those parts. And then we'll be working with you guys to figure out how we're going to put together that whole. So what I'd like to do, and you look in the redevelopment plan itself, one of the implementation steps is to put together a business development outreach and marketing strategy this information is going to be extremely valuable for us to be able to do that. And one of the things we talked about when we look at the strategic plan or strategic initiatives, maybe making a recommendation that that's the next step that we put onto this to make sure that we have that fully vetted. Doesn't mean we're not doing it now. It just means that we'll have better information in the next, 60 days to help have that conversation. So that's the goal.
Steve, I would hope that this consultant takes into account what information is useful and helpful about Cave Creek. Carefree and Cave Creek are sort of tied together like Siamese twins. When every weekend, when the weather's beautiful, you see hundreds of people walking around in Cave Creek.
Yeah.
And we can sort of imagine what sort of places they're going to. They're going to the beer places and the biker bars and other places like Retablo. But people, in my experience, when I talk to people who are in Cave Creek, I try and tell them to go to Carefree.
Yeah. And then they
so,
ask you, well, what's
why?
there?
What's there?
What's there? And that's the whole point, right?
Let's go to go see the sundial and the beautiful cactus garden and the beautiful town center. So somehow, and I have no idea how it should be done, but what we do in proposing, in advertising our town, has to take into account why people go to to Cave Creek and try and get them to come here at the same time.
So that's a good point, because part of this analysis is looking at where we fit in the competitive space. It's not just
Yeah.
Cave Creek.
Yeah.
It's where do we fit in with all the stuff in Scottsdale, Desert Ridge. I mean, it used to be that we didn't compete against all that stuff. We do now. But, Cave Creek's done, whether it was done intentionally or not, Cave Creek's got a very, very strong market position. When you hear Cave Creek, you know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You're going there for bars and restaurants, and it's going to be a longer strip of development, and you know exactly why it is and what you're going there for, right? And it's going to be they're going to have tourists from out of town going there. They have people who are regulars there. It appeals to people in the local market, and that's, to me, is the part that's missing here in Carefree is we just haven't fully decided to do what we need to do to get to where we need to get to have that level and how we fit into the context of all of these markets. Because again, I personally think we're missing out on the 5 million people that are here. I think Cave Creek has now been able to tap in, and it took a lot of pain and suffering for them to get to where they got to, but they've gotten there, and we're not going to be Cave Creek. That's not our shtick.
We can't be Cave Creek, but maybe we are the upscale place that people go to after they slum around in Cave Creek. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used that word.
But this
Did not mean that.
But this is the good thing.
After they do stuff in Cave Creek, they want to come up to a more sophisticated, a more cultured place,
Yeah.
which is Carefree.
And the beauty is you're going to be able to talk to Amy, and whatever ideas and whatever thoughts you have, she's going to do that. Now, she's not going to come back and say, Les Hardy said this, or John Nimsky said that, or whoever she talks to. She's going to consolidate a lot of that stuff and come up with, thematic themes. But, part of this is truth telling. And if there's things that, that really do frustrate you, this is the opportunity to get it on the table, right? Mike, you're not going to have any issues holding back on what your thoughts are, because you don't have many issues holding back here. So, and that's a good thing.
There's a couple of, there's some grassroots things that we can do though. For example, my wife volunteers for the Cave Creek Bureau of Tourism.
Yep.
And they have a very, I won't say sophisticated, but they have a well-organized group of volunteers that basically pitch Cave Creek.
Yep.
Do we have something like that here?
So we tried. When I first got here, we put together a Carefree Ambassadors group, and we met, and it just didn't take off. Some people came in, they participated, and they walked around, and they, the idea was that while people were here, you could give them a little personal touch, and
Should we try again? Because Shirley's the one that says, well, let me tell you about Carefree.
Yep. Oh, I'd love to do it again. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
it can't be that complicated to put together
Yeah.
a group of dedicated volunteers, give them a little office space,
Yep.
and have them open a couple hours a day for 5 days a week during the tourist season.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we were doing with the visitor center. We were going to have a little space in the visitor center for somebody to sit in. they could man the visitor center, but they could also walk the gardens. And, you know, somebody wants, they see somebody taking a picture and they're trying to selfie. Hey, I'll take that picture for you, right? And by the way, if you're hungry, there's like 4 or 5 different restaurants. And so I used to do that all the time, right? I mean, and it got to the point where I was doing it so much. I'm like, man, we really should have, I think residents would enjoy doing this. What I found was that we were setting it up, but all the residents wanted to come to the big events. And I'm like, well, these people are already coming for the big events. What we need to do is put that little special shine when somebody just decided to come here just because they wanted to come to Carefree. And so I'm with you. I'd love to get that spark back up again and move forward on that.
Well, who would take responsibility for trying to do that?
Probably Madison.
I'd say finding dedicated volunteers is the hardest part. To, like you said, people that would come on a regular day to day.
Yeah. I think what turned everybody off was the Walmart looking little blue vest that we had that they had to wear.
Yeah, they don't indicate folks that don't have uniforms.
Yeah, I know. To me, it was just walk around and it's, oh, you're a resident here? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to sure to make the experience better for you, right? You know, whatever information I could do to help you out.
Pitch Carefree.
Yep.
That's the job.
Yep. You know, we got events coming up. Oh, by the way, there's an event coming up this Saturday. You might want to come back, you know? Exactly. I'm 100%.
You know, like his car deal.
Yep.
Do we have any idea as to how much tourism questions or whatever comes in through the Chamber of Commerce? I volunteered there for 10 years, an afternoon a week, and there was a hell of a lot of people calling in with questions, you know, what's on, what's where, how do I get to so-and-so, where should I park or whatever it is. And I was a massive proponent of Carefree.
Yeah.
For that time. Steve is there by himself now, he doesn't have any volunteers, he doesn't have an assistant. Where are those phone calls going?
You know, we do get phone calls and emails. I don't know how many.
What
Madison.
about the ones that go to the Chamber of Commerce, that's what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so we were hoping is, you know, whatever, if the chamber push them over to our Visit Carefree website so they have access to, so we have a Visit Carefree website, they can push them to there to get information, or they can then reach out to the town.
Do we know that that is being done?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'll ask Steve. Yeah, so, you know, it's you're gonna like Amy. She's 5 feet of a lot, and she's great, and she's got a lot of experience. She's got a lot of enthusiasm. She loves this town. She was part of the original ASTAP, so she knows it. That's why she was able to work with us, and you know, and do this on a lower cost. And to be honest with you, she believes in it. She thinks that there's opportunity on maybe beyond just doing this exercise, and you know, because she does do development and she does have influence with developers. So
do I need to give you my email address again since you couldn't?
I don't know what happened to it. Maybe I just accidentally cut off the M on com or something. Who knows? I'll take a look, but if I do, I'll let you know. And the commercial code enforcement, this has been an interesting one. You know, it was assigned to economic development because we were losing economic development opportunity for businesses that aren't businesses, or businesses that really don't belong, and businesses that weren't as part of the ordinance. And so one of the things we were looking at, and I was tasked with, was maybe potentially putting together a policy. And it's not as easy as you think, because there's a lot of correction that needed to happen first, because we have issues, and not all of them are the same. There's some unique circumstances. Some things were worse than others. And so for us, it was just really trying to figure out, kind of unravel or identify all of these issues, and then figure out from there what we wanted to do. And to be honest with you, at that point, it really became less about economic development and more about what we're doing with code enforcement, zoning ordinances, and all those other things, and making sure that we're in compliance with all that. And so, to be honest with you, Stacy took the bull by the horns on this one and really started working on that. But I wanted to do is start looking at the dates. These dates are getting pushed out because I want to kind of go through really what's going on here. And it's not that we don't want to get a policy, but it's tough when you're trying to fix something, because the things we're doing now aren't necessarily going to be the policy that you have in place when you get everything right set. And so there's a lot of nuances, a lot of things, and we're learning a lot about what we can and can't do legally. But the whole point of where we are now is to make sure that we're in compliance with the code. And so everybody's been going through and reviewing the code. And then the second step is making sure that we're in compliance with, all the other stuff that we're doing, the business licenses, applications, and we reviewed all of these documents, we reviewed all of our processes, and we found out where issues and problems exist. I say one of the nice things is getting us on the automated system is going to help out a lot. But what we found is that there were gaps in getting information from, if a business license came in, they didn't necessarily send it to Stacy to see if the use was appropriate. And so the use would get approved, and we're like, that's not an allowable use, but now what do you do, right? You've allowed it. And so you got to figure out how to manage that. So those are the things that we've been trying to fix. And these are things that weren't done recently. They were done over time. And it's just making sure, we updated the building code not too long ago. Now we got a lot of spaces that aren't in compliance with the building code. How do you work with those guys to make sure they're in compliance with the building code without screwing a business over here who's been here for 20 years and they didn't do anything wrong? And in some cases, we were finding that businesses, all businesses have to have a certificate of occupancy as part of whether, you get a new business comes in, they take a new space, they have to get another business license, but they also have to get another certificate of occupancy. That necessarily wasn't happening. And so we've been slowly working with the fire department a lot to get just everybody up to compliance. And we're kind of getting to a place now, and there were specific businesses that people had pointed out that we've been dealing with. The other side of it is whatever we do, it has to be fair and equitable across the board. So we just couldn't start hammering on this guy and that guy and that guy. It was one of those things where we just had to look at everything holistically and say, we got to go after all of the, if we're focusing on uses that are non-conforming, we're going to go for all the uses that are non-conforming. If we're going to focus on feather banners, we're going to focus on all the feather banners. And so that's the way it's been approached. And so Stacy, I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit more than me. She put together a weekly meeting, and I'll let her take it from here, kind of like.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks, Steve. I think Steve covered quite a lot of it. Yes, so we were getting all of these different issues in town, whether it was commercial and town center or residential and somebody building something on a single family lot. So we decided that we needed to kind of sit together on a regular basis, create a list, and just start hammering out that list and trying to figure out how we could resolve these issues. What we were finding is mostly in the commercial setting, the violations tended to focus on business licenses, as Steve had said. A lot of businesses were operating without one. It's interesting how many people run a business and never knew they need a business license. But the other was the type of uses, regardless if it came to my desk or not. We had a lot of non-compliant uses, particularly storage, which offers nothing to the town and its vitality and tax base. As well as signage. Surprisingly, we had a lot of signage issues where people were utilizing temporary signs for their permanent signs. And so on the residential side, what was interesting is that a lot of people doing work without permits. And Carefree basically requires a permit for almost everything that you do, with good reason. So again, we sat down, we created this group, and it's a diverse group. We've got code enforcement, we've got fire, we've got the building department, Steve, economic development. Steve was instrumental in kind of bringing a lot of the commercial problems to the group. I think that's how you kind of got dragged into a lot of this. But, and of course, code enforcement. Our code enforcement officer comes with a Phoenix Police Department background, and so he's very thorough and has a very methodical way of moving towards trying to bring people into compliance, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want people to just comply. It's interesting how many times you can send a letter that says, you got a problem, you got to fix it in 30 days. Hey, you got a problem, and if you don't fix it in 7 days, we got to take it someplace to the next level. Hey, it's been those last 7 days. If you don't do something, this is going to become a court issue. And unfortunately, we have, I think, 4 or 5 that are now down at the Cave Creek Carefree Court.
So, Stacy, may I interrupt?
course.
Can I ask you, are the abandoned buildings behind the gas station, are those included in the ones where, because some immediate action needs to be taken? I've heard that over a year ago, they were condemned by the fire department, and they
Yep.
certainly are a fire hazard.
Yes.
And are they now at the level of going to court?
They're not going to court yet. There's actually, yes, we're very aware of it. You're exactly right. A year ago, they were condemned. I think it changed ownership. Is that correct, Steve? And
Yeah,
so,
there's some ownership issues, but then the fire department asked if they could do training there, and they were trying to work that all out, and then they decided they didn't want to do it, and so, but we're working on some other stuff with that particular owner that where we can get those taken down and maybe work on some other positive
Turn
things.
it into a small parking lot or something like
Right.
that.
You said it.
Yeah.
so we're aware of it, and you know, I hate to throw this. It's not an excuse, but the fact is a fact. I mean, we're one-man departments, and we try to move as we can on these things. You know, you reach out and you wait for responses back, and then you just kind of go on to the next. But so I would say, though, what has been, so as Steve mentioned, and we're enforcing things on a very fair basis. Some people don't believe that's the case, but it is. We've had issues, and we've worked with businesses, and the perfect example was the meadery, which is out at the 100 Easy Street building right outside the post office. There was complaints that they were never open. It looked like it was deserted. Got to give credit to the mayor, so we reached out. We said, you know, this is an issue. You need to be present. You need to have a viable business. You need to have regular hours. The mayor set the meadery, the people that were renting the space, up with another retail user, and now I don't know if you've been over there, but it's a fantastic business, fantastic layout. Really, I think, you know, what we want to see in success in our community. You know, there really is harm when people don't. It sounds so silly, you know, abide by the rules. The zoning. Sometimes you think like, well, why does it say this? The zoning ordinance reflects the values of the community. There's reasons why there's certain restrictions or allowances or things that are prohibited, is because it kind of feeds into whatever the values were at that time that were created. That's why I think the update's going to be a great thing, because, you know, we've got a new group. It's, you know, it's going to be, I think with the general plan being recently adopted, you know, there's kind of a current idea and vision of values. And so, it sometimes takes the hammer, but I hope the message to all of the community is that, you know, it's serious to the town. It impacts everybody on a certain level, and so I think so far it's been successful. So we're just going to keep plugging away at whatever comes to us.
Well, I think the success stories have been, the feather banners are the thing of, I mean, they were everywhere, and now there's none. And so that was one of the things where, you know, Stacy sends this letter out, and I said, just send it to everybody and so then we get the calls, well, how come I got it and so they're like, no, you all got it. And they all went down. And so I think when everybody realized they were all getting dinged by it, and it made it look a little bit nicer. And then the other success stories, you know, it's a tale of two things. You know, we have the place next to Venues, which has been storage for a long time, and then we had another storage place over on Tom Darlington and Ho, the 2-story office building there. Same exact time, talked to them and said, hey, you know, you might want to think about getting rid of that storage because it's not in compliance. One property owner went through, took care of it, kicked it out, fixed the building up, fixed the space up, leased it out. Now it's 2 productive commercial uses that were in these spaces. One was being utilized by storage, and the other one was someone was living in it. And so now they're both commercial. And, you know, and then sometimes it doesn't work out as far as a success. And so you have to put the hammer down, but from what I understand is the one next to Venues is moving out today, so.
Stacy, you said that there were a lot of permit violations, right? Commercial mostly or residential?
You mean work without permits? Mostly residential, I would say.
Just, you know, it makes sense to have some kind of education report.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, when people don't realize is that when they list their house, if any part of that work hasn't been permitted, it impacts the appraisal.
Mhm.
That's title.
Could. Mhm.
Title. Might be worthwhile to have.
Right.
Education class.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's the deal benefit.
Right, I don't disagree. I mean, you know, we get a lot of people that say they just didn't know. They work with a contractor that may not have worked in Carefree before, it just kind of jumps right in. But you're exactly right. It could bite them in the end if they don't realize how important it is, so.
Can I
Great.
also suggest that as part of our monthly programs, that you give us summary of sort of the solution? I'm perfectly happy for you to use a hammer or a feather to get people to comply, and leave it up to you to decide what's the best way to get them to comply. But when we have success, we need to know.
Yep.
You need to let us know, because we have friends and neighbors who are saying, why am I seeing you doing it?
Yeah. No, this is why we're doing the update now, is we wanted to make sure that we, set the tone, but we can, some of the stuff's legal, so we try not to, we gotta be careful about what we do, say, in certain cases, but yeah, we like to share the success stories because, I mean, at the end of the day, it could be a success story that it just went through the legal process and the problem got resolved. I mean, and, we're just, you hate to see it go that way, right? Because it's a lot of wasted time and energy on a lot of people's part, but I think everybody in this community was committed to making sure that we make sure things are just done right. And another problem that we're running into when it comes to permitting is that sometimes contractors will say, include in their prices, oh yeah, I'll get the permits. You're a homeowner, you're a business, you're a small business, you just trust that your contractor's doing that. And then all the next thing you know, they're blaming us for this and that or whatever, and they never even submitted for a permit, or they submitted for a permit, never got it approved, and they just started work. That stuff does happen. And it drives me nuts, because I'm like, how do you deal with that with the registrar of contractors? And they don't really honestly care. They don't, they're there to benefit the contractors, and that's their job, and so they work on their behalf in a lot of cases. And so it's been a frustration point, because I was like, maybe we can pull the contractor's license, right? And say, or ding them somehow for not getting permits. And, we had a case where a business, their contractor messed up, and the registrar contractor said, well, you have to let them back in there to fix it up. And they're like, why would I let somebody who doesn't know how to do this right come back into my property and fix it, right? I don't trust them anymore. And there's a lot of issues that happen that way. And we're trying to work through that as best we possibly can. But to your point, it's not always the homeowner that doesn't know. Sometimes the contractors just snow them over, and they bill them for the $500 to submit, but they never do it.
But it's a lot of time and effort on staff's part, and so, really the message is, it's a serious commitment to the town to try to bring people into compliance and to understand educationally what's expected. I mean, we have information on our webpage and things like that, and sometimes it's, you gotta do a little bit more hand-holding than that, or a little bit more information in people's faces, but, compliance is really the goal. We would hope that people understand that if we can't get you to comply, it does need to take it to another level.
So Stacy, that's why I think it's really important that when you have success
Sure, I
with
agree.
compliance, to let us know and
Yep.
let the community know. Maybe you don't need to say the names of the companies, but you can
No,
say,
happy to.
Yep.
we successfully got the guy who's storing to not store.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, every month, just give us a little 5-minute summary of your successes, because it does filter out into the, and it makes the community feel like the town is doing something.
Yeah.
Well, and if
Okay.
anybody hasn't been in it, go see the Seared Living. It's great what they did to that space right next to where the meadery was. And the meadery's still in there, and they're a subtenant to the meadery. They still do tastings there. You can still get tastings, and hopefully they'll be partnering up a little bit with the Carefree Bourbon. But Carefree Bourbon also now has posted hours for their tasting room to be in compliance, as well as they've updated their website to show the Carefree location as being a tasting room. So they've done all the things that we've asked them to do to be in compliance, and to where that would be, where Stacy outlined what compliance looks like. So it's another success story. So trying to really make that space and a little bit more usable.
There's a community in California that we're aware of, where somebody is taking the responsibility of publishing a column in that local community newspaper. And it's entitled The More You Know. And they write about all the stuff that Les and all of us here have talked about over
Yeah.
less than 15 minutes. It's a great piece of information for the community.
Yeah. Addison.
Just an idea.
Okay, we
I'm
can
not
add
saying
it to
So-
our,
so-
add it to our monthly newsletter.
So Stacy, toot your horn when you have successes. Toot your horn when you have successes.
Okay.
Because it does get out into the community, really, and it's important.
And while I want to say this was assigned to economic development, Stacy's done all the heavy lifting. I mean, she's had to make
I've
the
done all
tough.
the work.
We
No, I'm
know
just kidding.
that.
She's had to make
We've
the tough
noticed that,
decisions. She's the
Steve.
zoning administrator, and I'm going to tell you, it must not be easy writing that letter, because I'd hate to have to write that letter. But she's done it, and she's done it very professionally, and she's done it fair. That's the thing. So
I'm an optimist by nature, and I think the more people know,
yeah,
the less they'll violate.
I agree.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when they don't know,
Yeah.
Right.
that's when they make mistakes.
Right.
So,
Or they think a letter's just a letter, yeah.
When are you anticipating that we'll actually see a policy?
Yeah, so that's what we got to talk about. You know, because Ruben, the code enforcement officer, he's had to do a lot of things on his end, because a big component of this is investigation. And so for him to be able to do investigations, he needs to be able to do an investigation, because these are misdemeanors in some cases. And so these are crimes. And so he has to actually do police work. And then what we found out is that when he notifies or citations or things go before they can go to the prosecutor, he has to have all the information that a police department would have: height, weight, driver's license number, all that stuff. And so we actually had to pay a service so we can get all that information for people who, yeah. And that's part of the cost of doing this, right? So that's the exercises, those are the learning things that we're going through. He thought maybe he could get that information through the county sheriff's office. They don't provide that. And so the learning curve. So the goal is that, you know, hopefully within the next, and I think I put a date on there, but she's really running the show. So,
Not the policy show.
yes, we're doing the October, maybe December. We can start to talk about, you know, recommendations that would be on that, and then maybe looking for some kind of January approval or something to that effect. And this is really looking at, for me, it's kind of looking at the time frames that we're serious about this stuff, right? And it's just going to reflect a lot of what's actually in the code, but we'll put it into a document that we can publish, that people know that when they get a business license, they know that this is what they got to do.
When?
That's what I'm saying. I think, you know, I don't want to put, you know how this works, trying to put dates in for others to do work, but but I'm targeting, you know, if December, January timeframe was what I was thinking. January would be best. Yes.
That would be the review of potential.
We'll work together on a policy.
Yeah.
One thing on, if you back up, you had a different slide on for just a second. You had all these there. The last word in the first box is a
Persecutor. Submit to prosecutor. Yeah. I will never say that I'm the best proofreader. I'm a child of.
Maybe that was intentional.
Yeah. I'm a child of phonics. I don't know how to spell. Thank you all for your time. I know this stuff takes a lot of time sometimes, but it's great. You guys, the feedback we get has been great.
Well, let me just take one minute before we go. John and I talked about little things to do to just create community spirit. And when the Sonoran Arts League put up their totem pole and that art totem pole, there was a little celebration. There was a little get together, and it was nice. There were 15 or 20 people. So my suggestion is that when we actually have the signs delivered, and when the cranes are there and the holes are dug, and they're ready to put those big signs in the ground, let's have a little celebration. Let's let the people of town know that we're doing this. We're having a little ceremony to this is town improvement. I think it would be something that people would like, they would like to see. You could have a little, the mayor could have a little speech. But everything we do in town to celebrate any improvements, I think we ought to turn it into a little ceremony.
It's a great idea. Maybe what we can do is look at the timing to have the directory sign installed first,
Yes, yes.
and then that way we can do it right there in the pavilion area.
It's part of this thing again about the more you know.
Yep.
You know, and it feeds right back into what I talked about earlier, which is there are various components of marketing. One is image development. You're trying to develop an image of Sherwood. You're trying to get the surrounding communities to get a feel for what Carefree is. And this is just one of those building blocks. That isn't your responsibility, in my mind anyway. That isn't your responsibility, but it's a responsibility of whoever is doing marketing / public relations
Yeah.
to come up with that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, what's gonna draw people in here, into Carefree, is what's special about Carefree.
Right.
And they're not gonna come up with that by themselves. You know, they have to be educated about what's special in Carefree. And as I said before, I've been here since '94. And I don't see that.
We're still trying to figure it out.
You know, I don't see that. I don't see a lot of that.
what's special about Carefree.
What's that?
You are.
Oh, Peter, you're so nice.
If none of you have been to go to the Visit Carefree website, that's a good. It does have a lot of information on there.
A lot of it really does.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, at some previous zoning, mountainside, something, we approved a location of a home that had to move a 200-ton boulder.
Yes.
Has that happened, and did we get to film it?
I reached out to them, they said they would film it, I reached out to her twice, I have not heard from them. So that's kind of
Has the
where
building
They have-
permit been issued?
They have not, they haven't even submitted for a building permit, so that could be why.
Okay.
So they really can't move in without a permit, so.
Two very large cactuses fell down today from that property onto Stagecoach.
Oh.
That's
When we're ready, what we'll film is Peter sitting on top of the
Any other points?
That's the rest of your.
Hmm?
Do you have anything else?
That's. Is there any more you want?
Right.
I think we're good.
I would entertain a motion, please. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes should have it, do have it, so ordered. We'll see you next time.
Thank y'all.
Everybody have a good Halloween.
Oh, and everybody have a good Halloween.
Has what?
And stay dry. It's been pouring out.
We're good.